to be a national organization. And I represented Ann Arbor, and Dr. Wangenstein was in charge of everything. That's when everybody signed our program. Dr. Fink signed for me, so I didn't get on the big record. But Dr. Lytlemeyer came from Virginia up to Lansing, met with us, and he said, boy, this is a mess. You've got us meeting around the little box in the basement, and this is not a national organization. And he went back to Virginia, and he said, I'm going to hold a national meeting in November. You guys are welcome to come, and we're really going to organize this thing. Well, Dr. Wangenstein said, I get the idea in Michigan. Dr. Ruppke had the idea in Michigan. We don't want this thing usurped from us. So what they did was have a meeting on the 1st of October. We got together again in East Lansing. He said, let's have a logo. Let's have official membership cards. Let's pay $25 a year dues. And then we're going to write a constitution, and we're going to be a national organization before we go next month down to see Lytlemeyer in Virginia. So, as I say, we fought like brothers internally. And we did come up with that. And we came up, Art Howard, who was our secretary, came up with this logo. It was kind of cool because he's got like a chessboard, and I'm sure you've all seen it. It looks like a little chess or checkerboard. And one square is missing. And he said, you know, we're the missing specialty in medicine. And he took this little square out, so it left a little white spot, and the rest was a chessboard. And he turned it 90 degrees, which it isn't anymore. Now it's just a little dot. But this little diamond was turned 90 degrees and made the dot over American College of Emergency Physicians. We thought that was a cool little logo. And we also decided to call ourselves a college because one of the doctors there who did primarily in OB-GYN, he was in the College of OB-GYN. So he said, we don't want to just be an academy or something like that. Let's be a college. It's a little presumptuous on our part. We got no recognition anywhere. But we became a college. And we went to the meeting in November down with Dr. Lytlemeyer. And at that time, Dr. Lingenfelter, if I go back to him, this fellow from Ypsilanti, decided that he didn't want any osteopaths involved in this. Well, any osteopaths whose primary practice was in the emergency room, and they were spending most of their time there, were acceptable to the majority of us. Dr. Lingenfelter was very adamant about this, so before the ink had dried on our initial constitution, he quit. So now we've got second guys. There was a big struggle then between Dr. Lytlemeyer when we went down there. He wanted to be the national organization, and so did Dr. Wangenstein. The vote went to Wangenstein, and so he actually became our first president. Dr. Lytlemeyer did not quit like Dr. Lingenfelter did. He was a very big contributor in later years to emergency medicine, extremely so with the EMS programs. And from that, it was interesting because from that meeting, even though there was a big struggle between Lytlemeyer and the Michigan group, 6 of the people at that meeting later became presidents of the ACPP. Dr. Wangenstein, Dr. Mills later on, Dr. Hannes became a president, Dr. Casey from Florida, Dr. Graves from Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Dr. McDade from the Virginia group. All of them later became presidents. It's kind of interesting. The meeting ended, and we had a couple of little meetings in December and January of next year, and out-of-state guys couldn't really come to us, so they were not big meetings. About that same time, the emergency nurses got together and formed what's called the Emergency Department Nurses Association. They called it EDNA, and their logo was a roadrunner, which is very appropriate for emergency nurses. You may recall that. But in later years, they became the Emergency Nurses Association, dropped their logo of the roadrunner, and Judy Kellner became the director of it in 1985. By that time, they had 30,000 nurses in ENA. In 1969 comes along, and I don't know if I'm clear again on it. Just got the highlights from there. But John Rogers became our executive director, and he was our secretary. John Rogers from the Michigan group had a little cigar box, and for the first 4 years that we were calling ourselves a specialty, our whole treasury was in that cigar box. Finally, after 4 years of dues and everything else, we had accumulated $4,006. We were still in that cigar box. But he was our treasurer, and then he became our executive director. And then we had to get Mayor Valeas's out of the picture. They were our accountants for all 6 groups. They were making far more money than any of our groups because they were taking their 8% from everybody. So we said, this is kind of a conflict of interest. How can you be on the board of our national organization collecting 8% from all of us? And so over the conflict of interest, we said, you guys have got to quit being our accountants. We're going to do our own billing. And they sent us a bill for, quote, services rendered, which was more than the $4,006 that we had in our treasury, and was a big burden on us for the next 4 or 5 years, trying to pay off the Mayor Valeas's bills for their services, which we couldn't quite understand. Interesting part is they left the country, and with the money that they got for our services, bought a Greek island, and that's where they live now. And they invited us over, which was kind of like salt in the moon. Come over anytime. Beautiful island. Then my partner, Dr. Fink, who was kind of an abrasive character. He was first-age class at the University of Michigan, but he tended to be a little bit brusque. We had one nurse doing a cardiac arrest that was going on, and I was in there with him, and we were each one doing our assigned tasks. Back then, it was not as complex as you guys are doing now, but we were doing a cardiac arrest code. And this nurse was kind of not doing her part, and unless everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do, so it didn't go well. So George looks across the table at her and he says, "Look, if you don't understand what you're doing, at least fall down so you're out of our way." And she immediately quit right out of the room in tears. We never saw her again. But anyway, George at our first meeting was so upset. He was a big advocate of maintaining private practices. Don't let yourselves be taken over by the hospital employees. Don't let the surgeons and the internists intimidate you and say they're going to collect all the billings. We're not going to be anything except interns again. And so he was the editor of our first little journal, which is a 4-page thing called the Quarterly. And on the front he put this little statue. And this is not the way things are supposed to be done in a professional journal, but he put on the front of it, "Don't let anyone F on your statue." And so Dr. Williamstein said, "George, this is supposed to be a professional journal. This is not quite what we had in mind. You're fired." And then Dr. Vanderwerf in Oakwood Hospital in Detroit took over as the editor of our quarterly, which later became what was called JACD, Journal of American Academy of Emergency Physicians. And later in 1980, when we finally were accepted as a specialty, became the Annals of Emergency Medicine, which you guys are probably familiar with. We decided finally we were going to have a scientific assemblage because we were having trouble with Blue Shield. We were having trouble. EMS was just a kind of a little mishmash of people trying to get together, and some of the Vietnam veterans returning. We thought we really needed a more organized program. And so at a meeting at the Palmer House in Chicago, we had all of 50 members present. That was about our total organization. And at that meeting, one of the surgeons got up, Dr. Kennedy, and he said, "You guys don't deserve to be a specialty. You're the weakest link in hospital care," which kind of we were. He was right in a way. Well, that's the time we've got to define ourselves. We've got to figure out what emergency really is, because it is just a mishmash of the first hour of care. And I think Dr. Williamstein was quite influential in saying,